How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is, according to Twitter, wannabe incel looking ass motherfucker, and welcome to Liberty After Dark. Today I have something special planned, something oh so special. I was going to do a read through of the comments of the last video I did, it's November, so like 3 months ago, when I went over that Vosh Coconut Island video and I talk about sucking dicks for coconuts for however long that video was. But I decided that there's no sense in reducing all of ourselves to that level. So we're going to skip on that one for now, at least. If there's enough demand in the comments, we may pick some of the more sensible ones and some of the really spicy ones, and we can go through them together and figure out where they might be going astray a bit. But today I wanted to talk about something else. I wanted to talk about something else philosophy related that was on my mind. And it's a topic that I have talked about a lot on podcasts and on streams and on Twitter and social medias in general. But I wanted to go back a little bit of philosophy 101, kind of like when we were doing in our Hume's Law video that we did. And I want to talk about what the implications are for a subjective morality. I know, spicy video topic, spicy name, spicy title. I'm sure I came up with something just absolutely mind-numbingly boring, but it is something that I think is really important and deserves a little bit of discussion. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. The first thing I want to get out of the way is that if you're not a person who believes in a subjective morality, and you're like a objective realist, and you think objective morality is king in the way everything is and will always be, etc., yada yada, this video isn't for you. We can make another video in another time talking about where I think there might be to use the correct terminology, a severe lack of evidence supporting that position. But this is specifically going to be for the people who already believe or operate as if there is a subjective morality. And that comes to what I think is a really interesting problem that I think is just kind of ingrained into us as people, and something I might talk a little bit more if we do a moral realism video at some point in the future. But specifically what I'm talking about is moral anti-realists or moral subjectivists who believe that or operate as if is probably a better way of saying it, that their morality is somehow objective, right? If you guys are engaged in any type of philosophy or ethics or politics or etc., you'll hear a lot of people say that they're, to be a good person, you must do X, Y, or Z, right? And what I think is really interesting is the special, unique case scenario where you have someone who says, morality is subjective, but, and then they try to follow it up with, if you want to be a good person, or everybody can agree that, or we should probably do something like, and it's very interesting to me. It's very interesting to me that these sorts of, we'll say, white lie imperatives are being placed by people who don't believe that any of those things exist in like a broader context. And I have a lot of opinions about why I think people might do that, why I think it might just be kind of a part of being like a state of nature human, this like desire for compulsion and for having like powerful, cogent arguments to convince people to your position. But I want to focus specifically on why that's super wrong and why I absolutely hate it. So let's just start at the top, right? If you already believe that morality is subjective, basically what you're saying is that there's nothing in reality that we can pin any morality to. It doesn't mean that necessarily any given ethical system can be anything that it wants, because there are still things about the universe that has to kind of conform to in order to be a system at all. Otherwise, you're just kind of like back in the state of nature, which you guys can check out. If I remember, I'll link a video up in this direction where you can check out some talks on the state of nature I did with Patrick Smith to get a little bit of background on that. If you're developing or are a part of an ethical system in a world where morality is subjective, there's a bit of a, how do we say this, who gives a shit problem. in ethics, right? That's probably the easiest way to put it. But basically what I'm getting at is that your ability to compel people to follow any given ethical theory is as much as you can make them care about it. Because morality is subjective, there is no compulsion for anybody to follow any particular type of morality, right? The only thing that you are compelled to follow or to be a part of is the state of nature, and that's just because that's like the base layer of reality. Again, I'm not going to go super far on the state of nature, but that's just, that's all. It's like state of nature or dead are like your two options of existence. And you can choose to be above the state of nature and follow a given ethical system, but the word choose there is super, super duper important. It means that there is no imperative, that the selection to be moral is inherently arbitrary. Now, kind of tying this back into what I was saying earlier, imagine someone is, we pick on these people all the time on this channel, or we used to anyways when I made videos. So let's go back to the utilitarians, right? Someone comes up to you and is like, look, morality is subjective, but we should probably make our main operating ethos that we should reduce the amount of harm in the world, right? And what's really interesting about that is that it's a completely weightless statement, right? And like that one I think is like the least offensive. It's kind of asserting in like a collectivist sort of way that we despite the fact that there's no reason for us to do so other than us wanting to, we should do this thing. A more heinous example of what really grinds my gears in this situation would be well, morality is subjective, but smoking weed is bad, right? Like something like that. Something like that, Ooh, that one right there is like a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I probably should have started with something like that. But that it makes absolutely no sense to say morality is subjective, but X thing is bad always, right? You could make like an empirical claim and be like, oh, morality is subjective and it's raining outside. That's fine. But the second you start using language like good or bad, you immediately have kind of tossed the baby out with the bathwater in asserting these things to other people. And it's not only is it intellectually wrong, but it's actually kind of manipulative if you think about it. Because what you can kind of infer from what's being done there is that, well, morality is subjective, so I get to make whatever system I want. But if you want to be a good person, you have to follow my system, right? And as someone who is a moral subjectivist, this is something that I have to be very careful with, because there is, in my opinion, no objective good. There's good as I define it, there's good as other people define it, and you have to be really clear about these things when talking, otherwise we're talking past each other. Because if you just tell me it's good to wash my car on a Tuesday, I'm going to assume you're talking that it is just, you believe it to just be good. It is just the good. Some good that is always good. And there can be things that a lot of us agree are good things, but that doesn't make them, objectively good things. I'm sure that's not hopefully I didn't shatter anybody's universe there with that revelation. I think about it as kind of like the ultimate have your cake and eat it too in philosophy. And these examples may seem pretty moot, and these are things that we typically engage in like conversations, and there's not really any back and forth or any repercussions or consequences for anybody saying or doing or believing any of these things. But what becomes really interesting is when these moralities that are built on a subjective worldview start to take these assertions and then impose them onto other people. And this line of thinking that I was talking about earlier is exactly what leads to that. So, for example, right, this is only going to be a problem when people disagree with whatever your decision is, right? So I talked about the car washing thing a second ago. So let's just say you come up with some philosophy and it comes up with a way to rationally deduce that washing your car on a Tuesday is good, and you should always wash your car on a Tuesday because it's good, and being good is what we want to be, right? Well, that's, I guess, fine for you to just kind of say, but once you start doing things like, putting a you didn't wash your car on Tuesday fine, or you start putting people in the didn't wash their car on Tuesday jail, and you start handing out, you create a task force for finding people who didn't wash their car on Tuesday. You've gone beyond the realm of anything that subjective morality can support, and you've started implying it as if it is some kind of objective morality. This is why, if any of you guys are following me on Twitter, I've been using this phrase a lot: we need a divorce, right? Because truth be told, if morality is subjective, we all have very little power over each other to compel each other to do certain things, or to act a certain way. And that's a good thing, I think. I want to say that first. I think that's a good thing that people do have very limited authority over one another. But that also leads to problems for people who want to get things done. And if you want to get good done, for example, and you believe washing your car on a Tuesday is good, and so everybody must wash their car on a Tuesday, then obviously implying that and building rules around that and imposing that on people is necessarily presuming that there is some kind of compulsion to it that everybody must follow. And if you don't have any sort of compulsion, if it's not an objective moral statement, if it's not something that can be backed up by the universe, you're a state of nature being. You've left the realm of ethics by imposing this onto other people. So really what I wanted to get across in this video, what I think was super important, and the whole reason that I wanted to make it is that you can pretty much live however you want as long as you don't mess with other people. This is probably, I don't think you should live however you want. I think subjectively that there are things you can do and processes and steps you can take to live like a more fulfilled, better life with other people involved. But if you wanted to just go off onto your own little slice of the woods and do whatever you want that didn't involve other human beings and their things, you could pretty much do that, because morality is subjective. It doesn't matter if I think you should wash your car on Tuesday, or if Heather thinks it, or if the United States thinks it, or whatever. As long as you're not messing with other people, you can just do whatever you want, basically. And the only reason you can't do whatever you want when you're messing with other people is because the second you engage with them as a state of nature being, they're going to engage back. So it's not even that you can't. You have the physical capacity to do whatever you want. Most people who are who like to stay alive shouldn't do those things. How about I put it that way? So just, I like to stay very truthful and very intentional with my language when I'm talking about these things. And so I don't like it when people couch their subjective values and moral systems into compulsory objective language. There is extremely little that I believe a person has to do to be a morally good person. And actually, I don't think there's really anything a morally good person has to proactively do. It's more things you don't do that make you a morally good person. Now, subjectively to me, my value of what is a good person might be different than that. But if we're just talking about morality and what systems that we can apply to live peaceful and happy lives, you really have to watch out for people who are couching these things in this worldview. For the objective realists, like I talked about earlier, they're going to say these things because they believe these things. Smoking weed is bad because God told me, or something. If you believe that, we got a whole lot of work to do to get around that problem. But from subjective to subjective moralists, just remember that, it is subjective, and that there's going to be a lot of people who have a lot of different interpretations on how they want to live their lives. And make sure that you aren't either repeating something that somebody else is saying, or saying things that are implying that what you are doing is the good. Because I can guarantee you it's probably not, right? Whatever thing you think people should or shouldn't be doing is almost certainly not the good, because I don't believe the good exists. Also, keep an eye out for people who make this kind of claim, because it is it's very deceptive And I think a lot of the people who do it don't even know what they're doing. But if you know what they're doing, it can help you when approaching these kinds of conversations, because the first thing you should be asking is, after somebody says, morality is subjective, but we shouldn't brush our teeth on Tuesdays, you should be asking why you should care if morality is subjective. These kind of universal statements always are couched, especially in that kind of worldview, are fallacious, first off, because they only matter in the given system that they're presented under. And two, you have to choose whether or not you want to engage with that system. Obviously, I, as a person who likes ethics and philosophy, think that you should engage with a system that elevates you above the state of nature. I think it would make a lot of our lives happier, but guess what? There's nothing objective about that. So just remember, subjective morality means morality is subjective, and even the things that you really don't like or really want people to do are still subjective, and you have zero ability to compel anybody to do them other than to convince them that they should. That's all I've got for today, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.